Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Drop, and this is my first impressions look on the brand New Balance Fresh Foam BB V3. So of course we got the V1, the V2, and then now we got the V3 of course. So as far as this shoe goes, it retails for 130 bucks, which is actually a pretty good price. And the Fresh Foam BB line has actually been very solid for New Balance, and I feel like New Balance is super duper underrated, guys, for hoop shoes, because I feel like I never actually, now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever seen a New Balance hoop shoe at the gym. I feel like Anta's pretty popular. I've seen a good amount of Li-Nings as well, you know what I mean? And also Way of Wade's, but never really New Balance. And New Balance actually makes some really nice quality and also performers, you know what I mean? But also it's a pretty good price, 130 bucks. Besides the Kawais, the Kawais I feel like are a little bit too expensive. But the Fresh Foam BB, you know, the Hezi Low V2s and also the two-ways are always fantastic performers. And also obviously the Fresh Foam BBs use Fresh Foam for the actual cushioning setup. So all these shoes have actually had really nice cushion. It prioritizes a little bit more of like a softer feel with not as good court feel, of course, right? So if you guys do want to cop this shoe or any of these shoes, I'll try to leave in the free link in the description box. But let's get it started right off with the Traxione. So in this colorway, we have a solid black rubber outsole, and it's like a wavy herringbone traction pattern, like a wavy wave bone traction, right? And as far as how it looks, it kind of reminds me of the Hezi Low V2, you know what I mean? So how does the traction feel so far? So when I first got it, it had a very nice bite. So the bite actually seems really good, right? And also there seems to be a pretty nice loud high pitched squeak, which of course has nothing to do with performance, but the Fresh Foams have actually had really loud squeaks. You know, the V2 was extremely freaking loud, and then the V3 same thing, and also the original one had pretty loud squeaks as well. So that's good, of course, if you do like to have a squeak in your hoop shoes like me. But I don't know if you guys can see, right? I feel like it might be a little bit easier to see because it is a black color. Maybe this one's a little bit more, like it's a little bit easier to see on because there's a little bit of dust here stuck, right? So, you know, when I first got it, I was like, oh, it feels pretty nice. But then I was walking around inside of my apartment because it is dead stock. And while I was walking around inside of my apartment a little bit, you know, there's dust, there's dog hair and stuff like that. And it seems to be picking up that dust, and it was pretty affected by it and didn't have as good stops, right? So of course, the finish on my floors is different from the actual basketball court, but it might be that the dust performance isn't going to be super good. Hopefully it's not the case, but right now that's just from my first impression. That's what it feels like, you know what I mean? So it might not have as good dust performance. And as far as the durability goes, I mean, durability does not seem very good, you know what I mean? The grooves are not super thick. They're actually pretty thin, and also the rubber is very soft. So I feel like the durability won't be too good in this outsole. So yeah, we'll have to see on the dust performance. I'm gonna play in these tomorrow. I'm pretty excited about that. But overall traction does feel pretty dang nice. And now moving on to the heel to toe transition, overall it does feel pretty dang smooth, especially here in the heel. First of all, we have a crazy curve. Look at that, you know, so we do have a very nice curve shape, but also pretty much fully, look at this, guys. Usually companies, you know, cage the foam a little bit here in the heel, whether it be here on the sides, you know, or in the back of the heel. But look at this, it's fully freaking exposed, you know, it's just full pure like foam, and it has a crazy amount of compression, also a nice little bounce as well. So it's just super duper soft when you're heel striking a little bit, especially even if you're walking around. But also I feel like, you know, once you get going and stuff like that, it'll feel very nice. I mean, obviously I haven't played in these yet. I wasn't even like really running around in them too much inside of my apartment, you know, but it does feel extremely smooth here in the heel. And then coming here into the forefoot, very nice curved shape. It does have a midfoot shank plate almost, you know what I mean? And we do have this plastic piece, and it does have pretty good, actually really good torsional support. But yeah, here in the forefoot, very nice curved shape. Of course, I really like that. And then here in the forefoot, we do actually have a nice bit of flex. It's not super easy to flex though, right? But also look, it's actually very easy to flex here. It's not super like explosive or springy feeling. It's weird because torsion support is good, like it doesn't bend too much, but has a good amount of forefoot flex, or actually a flex here in the entire forefoot. So yeah, very smooth feeling heel to toe transition so far with good torsion support. And now moving on to the cushioning setup. So the cushioning setup is freaking insane, guys, and only for $130, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's pretty much the biggest difference from like cheaper shoes to a more expensive shoes usually, you know what I mean? Sometimes, you know, companies give us a really good deal, you know, but usually you have to pay a little bit more if you want like a crazy cushioning setup, whether it be something super comfortable, has a lot of compression, a lot of bounce and stuff like that. But here in this setup, 130 bucks, I feel like it's still a pretty dang good price, and you're getting full length, of course, Fresh Foam X. It says Fresh Foam X right here in the back, and it's also dual density, right? So of course we do have a softer core, right? The core of the actual midsole is soft, and then around the perimeter of the actual like midsole or the cushioning setup, we have a firmer foam. That's what it says, and it's still soft though. Like even pressing with my finger, it's still really soft. But yeah, this cushioning setup is so freaking crazy and comfortable. I almost feel like it might be a little bit too much. I'm actually a little bit worried about feeling mushy. So we'll have to see on responsiveness, right? Either it kind of breaks in and bottoms out a little bit and doesn't have as much of a too soft feeling for me right now, or it just stays really soft and it might be a little bit too mushy. Again, we'll have to see on that, but I am a little bit worried about that. But yeah, the actual core feel is pretty dang bad. It's actually really high up off the ground, which kind of sucks. And I would say it's like the original the Fresh Foam BB had the best core feel, right? I would still say it's like around average, maybe a little bit worse than average. And then of course the V2 had okay core feel as well, but it is higher up off the ground than this shoe, right? But then this even is a little bit higher, you know? So the forefoot feels pretty similar, but the heel is a little bit higher up off the ground. Maybe they just wanted a really well cushioned setup. I don't know, but it's absolutely insane. And it's also higher up off the ground than the Jordan 40. I was, you know, wearing both of these shoes at the same time, and the Jordan 40 is actually lower to the ground than the Fresh Foam BB V3, which is kind of insane. So yeah, doesn't have good core feel, but the step in comfort, first of all, is really freaking comfortable, right? The actual insole is pretty thick, it's soft and stuff like that. It has a more of like a really nice memory foam, like a stiffer gel-like memory foam rather than like the Ortholite foam, you know what I mean? So that feels pretty nice. And then underneath that, we have a stiffer type of struggle board, but it's actually kind of soft still. It's not like super glued down or anything like that. So of course, it's not gonna give you as soft of a feel for step and comfort as like a soft mesh struggle board, but still it feels really soft, and there's a nice bit of compression right underneath my foot for the entire footbed. You know what I mean? Forefoot, midfoot, and heel. So also the underfoot cushion is really freaking soft, right? It's soft, it has a nice little bounce as well, has a crazy amount of heel compression as well, and it feels a little bouncy. Has a nice little kind of like rebound back here in the heel especially. So yeah, the cushioning setup is maximum in this shoe, right? And I guess the only thing I kind of don't like is the core feel, and also maybe it might be a little bit too soft for me. We'll have to see again on the responsiveness of the cushioning setup. Is it gonna like bottom out a little bit and get a little bit stiffer? I would like that a little bit, because I think for me personally right now it's a little bit too soft, but if you want maximum cushion and you don't really care about core feel, I feel like this is gonna be a very nice option for you. And it has a little bit more heel compression than the V2, and also the original one actually had a nice bit of kind of like cage here on the lateral side. So yeah, there is the cushioning setup there. Moving on to the upper. So the upper is actually pretty dang nice as well. It's using a mix of like old school materials, right? You can see the suede material. It's actually pretty buttery. You know, the quality is pretty nice, which surprised me. And then of course here in the forefoot, we do have like this mesh material, right? And actually feels really nice for quality. It doesn't feel cheap at all, you know? So we do have some overlays too, and then here in the forefoot we do have these kind of like two open pods almost, right? And it does feel really soft there, but it doesn't feel like it's lacking in support too much. It does stretch a little bit though, so we'll have to see on how supportive the overall forefoot is, but it doesn't feel terrible right now at all. Of course, we do have the New Balance logo here in the midfoot as well. And then at the tip of the toe, we do have a very thin and pretty soft like plastic material. You know what I mean? It does make it a little bit more rigid at the tip of the toe, but it's still able to kind of like flex a little bit. So that'll of course be really good for adding a little bit of support and structural rigidity here, but also for durability if you do toe drags, right? So it actually feels really nice. It's thin too, and then here in the midfoot gets a little bit thicker, but still like pretty soft, right? And then over the eyelets almost, we have that suede material. And then for the tongue is actually extremely well padded. It feels really comfortable, and I feel like that's a really nice change from the V2, because the V2 literally had zero padding, you know what I mean, like a really thin tongue. The V3 feels extremely cozy. I mean, it does feel a little bit bulkier, of course, but I feel like that's a pretty good trade-off for a little bit more coziness and comfort right on top of your foot, you know. It's also a half booty construction tongue, giving you a better overall one-to-one fit, but it's like really up there. Like the material that's connected to the tongue is really high, you know what I mean. Sometimes, or usually, the half booty construction tongue goes a little bit more into the tongue or inside of the shoe a little bit, but for the Fresh Foam BB-V3, it kind of comes up a lot, right? And then here in the ankle area, I would say it's actually not super well padded, you know what I mean. It's not like there's not a crazy amount of padding, which is kind of crazy, you know. And there seems to be an internal TPU heel counter, but it feels very short, you know what I mean. Like if I press here, you can see how it like kind of bends in. So it's not a crazy large or a stiff internal TPU heel counter. So overall, for 130 bucks, it feels really nice on foot. It feels minimal. It feels overall pretty supportive, and the quality seems really nice, right? So yeah, there is the material there. Moving on to the fit. So I went up half a size, and this shoe fits me perfectly. It's actually really snug and really tight here in the forefoot for me, right? And I went the exact same size here in the V2. So if you know what size you are here in the V2, you can go pretty much the exact same size here in the V3. However, the V3 definitely has the most snug fit. I mean, just keep in mind the V2 is broken in. And I did play in this shoe as well, so these might be a little bit more broken in. That's why it's a little bit more roomy. But just for right now, it feels like the V3 is the most snug for the fit here in the forefoot, right? So lengthwise, I'm good. You know, it does run a little bit long, but I don't really mind it too much because the forefoot is very snug here, right? It's like right on top of my toes. And then because of this kind of like overlay, you know, it doesn't really like stretch all too much, you know what I mean? So it's not as forgiving as like the V2, you know. On top of your foot, it's a little bit more forgiving here in the V2, but still has a nice bit of like rigidness, right? Also width-wise, I would say it's slightly narrow, more to like normal width for me. So nothing too snug or anything like that. I just really like how snug it is here on top of my foot, like here in the toe box. So yeah, if you want an extremely snug fit, then go true to size. But if you want to be a little bit more on the safer side of things, I definitely do feel like this shoe does run pretty snug. So if that's the case, then probably go up half a size, right? So there is the fit there. Moving on to the support and lockdown, it feels like it'll be pretty good. You know what I mean? For lateral containment, here in the forefoot, there's not too much going on, I guess, besides the foam. There's a little bit of a bump here, right? And of course, we do have the suede material, but the suede material doesn't add too much support, I don't think, you know? So I feel like it'll be good though. I feel like it'll be adequate enough, right? And then here in the heel, of course, we do have that internal TPU heel counter, as well as the foam and this plastic coming up here in the midfoot. So lateral containment feels like it's gonna be pretty dang good. And also lateral stability feels nice, you know, and also the overall shoe and upper does have like a more supportive and a little bit more of a stiffer feel than normal, you know what I mean? So that does feel nice as well. And the overall heel lockdown feels pretty nice too, which is kind of weird because it doesn't really cup in for the padding too much, you know? So there is a supporting lockdown there. I feel like it'll be pretty nice, and it feels a little bit more supportive and a little bit more rigid and stiff than a normal, I guess, like guard shoes, you know, like the Sabrinas, you know, the Jaws, right? So now moving on to the weight of the shoe. I mean, it doesn't feel super heavy, but it doesn't feel light at all. I'm guessing like 13.5 ounces maybe. Yeah, 13.8 ounces. Let's check the other shoe. 13.75 ounces. So yeah, for modern shoes, that's actually pretty heavy, you know what I mean? Like the average weight of my shoes, you know, for like forever since I started weighing shoes, it's around like 12.5 ounces, right? But for the past couple years, hoop shoes have gotten super duper lightweight. So I feel like the average has gone down a little bit to maybe like 11.5 to 12 ounces. So comparing it to modern shoes, I definitely feel like it's a little bit heavy. And also, I wouldn't say bulky, but it definitely does feel a little bit mushy because of the cushioning setup, and also a little bit high up off the ground, which of course, I mean, for this shoe, I feel like they're more geared or focused on like cushion. So because of that, I mean, that totally makes sense. But if you do want that a court feel and more of like a responsive, stiffer ride, this probably isn't the best option. And this probably is the softest cushioning setup out of all three of these, right? So if you've ever tried the V2 or the original one, you're like, oh, it's actually, I feel like if it's the same, the V3 is gonna be nice. The V3 actually has more compression, it's softer and higher up off the ground. So again, we'll have to see on how it breaks in, you know, if it like bottoms out and gets stiffer, but right now it's a little bit too soft even for me. So But I do like it though. It's really, really comfortable, right? But also, I guess another thing I am a little bit worried about is the lateral instability, because again, like it's not caged at all for the foam, so it's super duper soft. Hopefully I don't have any issues like I did with like the Jaw 3. I mean, the Jaw 3 also, I didn't really have any terrible issues, but this is also like, it's not caged at all. You know what I mean? And also you are higher up off the ground. So yeah, there is the weight there. Moving on to the aesthetics, I love it. I actually love what New Balance is doing for this line. It looks more like a casual shoe. You know what I mean? Like it looks like a shoe that you kind of just wear out. You know what I mean? And also same thing with the V2. This color was really, really nice as well, and it's also with the materials. So this color also really looks nice. You know what I mean? It's like a really deep purple, almost like a muted purple, you know what I mean? But also I do love the overall design. It really has that New Balance kind of like trail shoe look, you know? So tell us what you guys think of the aesthetics down in the comment section below. So wrapping things up, I'm actually really, really excited about playing in the shoe. It does feel really nice. However, I am worried about a few things, right? First of all, the dust performance for the traction, the cushion being a little bit too soft, you know, especially for lateral stability. But other than that, it's feeling really nice. Like I love the cushioning setup. The upper feels really nice, especially for the quality. I love how it looks, you know. The traction feels really nice for the overall bite though. You know what I mean? So like I feel like it'll have a really good bite on a clean court, but again, we'll have to see on the dust. So my first impressions on this shoe is I'm very, very excited to try out, but again, we'll have to really see on how the actual performance is. So stay tuned for the full performance review. So anyways, that about concludes my first impressions look on the New Balance Fresh Foam BB V3. Again, if you guys want to cop any of these shoes, I'll try to leave in the feed link in the description box, but that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.